Okay, we're going to get started, everybody. Thank you guys, everyone who's attending today. We have a really great panel and short presentation today to go through and present to everybody. This is our webinar is hosted by Bridge and TruthSet. Eddie from TruthSet graciously accepted our invitation to participate today. We will be discussing identity and data accuracy in a post-cookie world. I'm sure everyone is very interested in the topic generally, and we are going to take you through, our thoughts on it and where we think the marketing and advertising world will go in a post-cookie environment, really focusing on data and all that means from a targeting perspective. So I'd like to start with introducing the people participating today. You see Eddie O'Loughlin, the Senior Director of Data Partnerships at TruthSet. I'm not going to take any of his thunder by telling you what TruthSet is yet, other than they are filling a great market gap and a need that we've all had in this industry probably forever around accuracy of data overall, but more specifically, the accuracy of attributes and segments that are built to audiences that are bought against every day. And
you take over here is that I once had hair.
So yeah, he actually got a haircut this morning, but that is actually Eddie in the picture and on the screen. It's not somebody else. It's not Bizarro Eddie. And we have Josh Hirsch, who has been at Bridge for forever. It feels like 5+ years, and he is the Senior Director of Database Systems. I personally have known Josh for over 20 years, so he is he's one of the smartest people I know, if not the smartest, and also has helped build the infrastructure at Bridge to power everything that we do. So Josh, thank you for participating. Eddie, thank you for obviously joining us today, and let's jump into it. I just want to tell everybody who's attending, you should have a Q&A section on your screen within the webinar screen. Feel free to write in your questions throughout the webinar. We are going to spend a lot of the time block answering your questions, as obviously we want to make sure we're answering the things that are most important to you. So feel free to type it in, and we will get to them after the presentation. So let's start here. 75% of your ad spend is wasted every year. We obviously started here. It's a very impactful, and if you didn't know that, it's, I think, pretty surprising. Just the number 75. Wow, that's just crazy. And we at Bridge, we have always sort of had the mantra that we want to make your advertising spend more efficient through accurate targeting, right? You don't want to waste any impressions on people that aren't interested or won't be interested, or even worse, will complain about seeing your whatever you're putting in front of them. So this just shows that marketers for too long have been willing to really accept that there will be an extremely high degree of waste, and that's changing as everyone is being challenged to be more accurate in their marketing. So without cookies, it's, what do we do, right? Cookies were already not that accurate, relied on in a way that obviously isn't transparent. You can't identify an actual person with a cookie. So we need to make sure that we're being cognizant of this isn't the apocalypse. It's just a change in the industry. Josh, I'd love to hear, a little bit from you on, identity resolution and, what our take is on it, your experience, and really, how we at Bridge approach it?
Sure. So the way we at Bridge approach it is, a lot of people have used the phrase person-based or people-based marketing. And for us, what we're doing with that is building our base data set on things that are people-based. So we are talking about people's names, people's emails, people's addresses, people's mobile devices, and things that we're able to tie together in that way. So we get people's signups on our website publisher network where they put in their email address and their name and their address, and that's there. And there isn't a question about how do we resolve, does that email match to that name and that address because the person put it in. And we have filters and rules to try to, clean out anything that was, bad data or bad input in there. And then we have other publisher networks with the mobile side where we get people's advertising ID, we get what apps are on people's devices, and we get on that same feed the email address. And then it's very easy for us to link the email address there to the email address in the first place. And then we have a mobile ID tied to an actual name and an address and a real live person, as opposed to a cookie that we have to sync with one DMP and hope that they're matching it to someone else, and an audience model that maybe works and that hopefully overlaps with someone else's anonymous IDs. And that way we're able to really build something that is based on individual people and not based on things being tied together in a more anonymous way.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Your last point around the person, right? As this slide says, identity resolution is critical for targeting. It's been the case for a couple years now. It's sort of become jargon and buzzwords that are thrown around. I want to focus on that person level and what that means from an accuracy perspective. So Eddie, I want to bring you in to talk about a little bit what TruthSet is doing to help advertisers sort of cut through the noise, because there's so many companies now that are providing audiences that are throwing around different jargony words that have different definitions. And what TruthSet is doing, in my opinion, around cutting through that, creating an industry benchmark that audience providers need to hit objectively, is something that the industry has so sorely needed for so long. So why don't you take us through that and what TruthSet is really trying to accomplish across the industry to make it better?
Yeah, thanks, Ari, and thanks everyone for joining to hear us nerd out about data for a few minutes here this morning. So TruthSet was founded with a really simple mission, and that is to evaluate the accuracy and quality of person-level data. When I say person-level data, I essentially mean data that's associated with an ID or an individual. And when I talk about data, specifically what we're measuring right now is demographic data. So things like, what is the age of an individual? What's their gender, race, ethnicity? Do they have kids in the household? What's their household income? Things like that. And for a long time, the data ecosystem really didn't have this measure of quality. Most people, when they make a data purchase, they're really focused on, does it have the appropriate scale for me to reach the audience that I want to? And of course, what's the cost of this data? So we wanted to introduce a layer of evaluating that data that's associated with, how accurate is it? And when we set out to, form this company, we had a couple of, I think, I would say mantras in mind. And you can see that listed on the slide here. One of them is being independent, unbiased, and unconflicted. So we started working with companies such as Bridge, who really cared about data quality. And one important thing that we wanted to make sure that we were doing is that when we were evaluating the accuracy of a company like Bridge, it wasn't like a situation where they were paying for, a good grade, right? So any data partner that works with us, they give us all of their data, and they're not, we're not compensating them or they're not compensating us, I guess I should say, in order to receive a good grade. We want to be transparent about how we're measuring. I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit in the slides, but we want to make sure that everyone knows exactly how, we're assessing the accuracy of data. And what ties in directly to, I think, what we're talking about today is we wanted to be agnostic to ID spaces. I'm sure Ari and Josh will get into it in the presentation, but with the advent of the cookie going away and all of these other IDs that can be associated with people, it's more important than ever to have the right ID associated with the right individual.
Yeah, I thank you so much, Eddie. And I want to make sure that we aren't just presenting sort of the mission and why, but also how are you doing that, right? We in the industry have known that this is needed, and one of the reasons we thought, or I definitely thought over the years, that it hasn't popped up is it's really hard. How do you do it, right? There's just so many benchmarks that you can rate an audience off of, right? The KPIs, the size, the quality, the accuracy, the vertical of the campaign, the length of the campaign. So how do you guys approach it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we have a slide on that here at the end of the deck, if you want to jump ahead to it.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get to that. I mean, okay, let's stay here. Sure.
Yeah, if we're talking about how we do it, so foundational layer of really assessing the accuracy of data is going out and working with data partners such as Bridge. So you can see on the left side of this graph, I mean, it's basically we've gone out and we've talked to every data company that we can think of, at least, that measures person level demographic data, and we collect all this information from each of these companies. And with that, we can see the overlap and agreement between different providers, right? So every provider has their own file, which is supposed to represent the US population. And we can see where Bridge may agree or disagree with other providers. And that's a really interesting thing, because if you think about it, if there's 20 providers that are saying the same thing about who Ari is, then we can probably feel a little bit more confident that that is accurate. The second component of what we do, though, we're not just looking at all the data providers and taking their word for it. We are evaluating the accuracy of this data against a validation set, or really that's like a super truthful set of data that is self-reported and verified in some way. So if you think about it, like these are situations where someone actually verifies that they're a certain age or a certain gender, and we compare that to an individual data provider such as Bridge to confirm whether, like, how accurate they are, right? Which ultimately ends up with a probability score, what we call a truth score, but that's a number between 0 and 1 associated with the accuracy of a record. But go ahead, Nari. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. So what I was really trying to get at before, and it's really important, the how. What I meant was, what you can get out of it, right? So we have a slide that really speaks to that. Can you take 30, 45 seconds to really go into that? Because what people care about here is what they get out of it, right? What is TruthSet providing by filling this gap? So fire away.
Yeah, no, the first thing is really, we break it down into 3 categories, which is analyze, optimize, and measure. The first step is something that Bridge has taken part of, which is analyze, meaning, essentially evaluate the different data sources to see who has the best data for a particular record, right? If you're a company that is interested specifically in people with high household income, analyze and figure out who is the provider with the best set of that data. Optimizing is really about how can I remove the waste associated with the lowest performing records that, if I'm trying to reach those people, let me remove the people in the data set that I'm buying that actually don't fit that criteria. And then measurement is really simple. There's a lot of companies that they have an idea of who their target audience is, but they don't necessarily know if they're reaching those people. So it's on really the post-delivery side, understanding who is the audience that I actually reach during a campaign.
Great. Yeah. And I think that any veteran, and there's definitely a mix of attendees here of sort of industry veterans, as well as people who, are really trying to learn about why accuracy and data quality matters so much. I'm going to take this and then I'm going to go back, Eddie and Josh, to you guys around let's dig in a little bit deeper to data platform differences, right? The data providers differences. I think a lot of people understand almost logically why quality matters, right? It's almost the same regardless of what you're talking about. We talked about waste. We want to eliminate as much waste. Budgets are tighter. There's more transparency in the sort of advertising dollars and how they're spent as agencies are being challenged as to where is this money going that I'm giving you. Obviously, with that should be the byproduct of being more on target. You're getting in front of the right people. And then, again, almost logically, obviously, you would have a higher ROI or return on ad spend as that becomes more, a more used or relied upon KPI measurement of success, which in turn turns to more effective campaigns. So let's spend here, this is really the crux of what TruthSet gives to ultimately give the badges of honor that you do, right? That this provider is in the top 3 compared to the rest of the providers that that participated within TruthSet. So let's quickly get through this because I want to get to people's questions, and I also want to talk about a couple more things. Definitely touch on privacy, but I want to give you, Eddie, the opportunity to just quickly talk about the badges that ultimately these numbers translate to.
Yeah, what you're looking at here is a simple index, what we call the Truth Score Index. But basically, if you think about it, 100 is average. So anything above 100 is better than average. So this 138 represents someone that's a provider that's 38% better than average in being able to identify young men. But the real takeaway here is there's a huge disparity in accuracy between providers. So choose wisely and make sure that you're evaluating providers based on accuracy before you go and buy data and apply it to a campaign.
So much, Eddie. We really appreciate it. We're going to get back to you in a little bit on the questions. I'm sure people are interested in learning a little bit more. Josh, I want to go to you just around linkage, right? What that means. People throw that word around. People have different words for the word linkage. Let's try to spend a minute on what it is, how we do it.
Oh yeah, I know I briefly mentioned it earlier, but here we have this good picture in the middle. Someone, let's call him John Smith, registers his name, his email, his address under a local auto dealership's newsletter, and Bridge partners with that auto dealership, and now we've collected that. Now, somewhere else, he might have registered for J Smith for a different website with the same zip code and no address, and it may count that person twice in our database. But what we then try to do is collect separately the mobile advertising ID and the email address, and perhaps the mobile advertising ID has 2 email addresses on it because he used his Gmail that comes with it and his Hotmail that he registered for one of those emails with. And now we're able to link that whole profile together. So now we know all the things on John's device. So we know the apps that he has. We know that he's interested in cars because he's registered for a car dealership. And we have other partners that provide us all kinds of traditional demographic information that we can also target the same way. We know where John lives because he registered with his address. And then we're able to put all of that together to target John and not target, say, men between 35 and 55 that may or may not like cars.
Yeah, Josh, I just want to throw a quick question at you around this. You discussed or you provided examples of, J Smith signing up here, J Smith signing up there. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the cross-screen engagement, right? So we talk about collecting on different screens, and how Bridge sort of approaches that and why that's important. Really finding the person versus trying to find them where on a specific place.
Right. So we are sort of out there listening, would be the way that I describe it. We're not going to try to source a list from, let's find everyone who registered for various car websites. So we need to go call every car dealership in the country and, can we buy your list? Can we buy your list? Can we buy your list? We're always just sort of collecting information in the background and having those data points linked together. So we get a signal that says, oh, this person just downloaded Carfax.com and Edmunds.com and Kelley Blue Book on their device. We don't need to know that they may or may not have signed up for a car dealership website that we may or may not have partnered with. So we keep our ears open to all of these places all over the data ecosystem to be able to give us those signals however we can find them. And then, the challenge for us is more making sure we know everything that we're collecting and being able to see what's relevant and what's not. And that's where, what we're doing. And I'm happy that you have this slide that you just pulled up here. People associate TikTok, with teenagers. It's the app for
or
young
younger,
people.
or even
right,
younger.
or even younger.
Yeah.
But teens make up only 27% of TikTok users. And a lot of people, 20 to 30 are using TikTok more and more now. So what we can do here at Bridge is actually reach people who have TikTok on their device. Not, well, let me guess who might have TikTok and, well, all right, let's just target teenagers. No, we can actually just target everyone who has TikTok. Now, by the way, we also can do this in the reverse case. So if you're looking to target users on TikTok because you have a competing app that you'd like them to see, Vine 2.0, let's say, that's why you would want to target people on TikTok. But we would also encourage you not to do the reverse, to say, if I want to target people who are between 20 and 30, let's target everyone who has TikTok. No, we would target people who we know to be between 20 and 30 from all the other signals that we.
Yeah, and one of the things about TikTok, obviously I'd heard of it for forever. Honestly, I didn't download it and install it on my device until last month, when they actually rolled out, obviously, an advertising platform and really tried, that other sort of social platforms have relied on for a long time, where you could identify people through their platform to target, as well as people-based targeting as well. So we at Bridge are hopping on that train, right? We want to be able to, again, find people where they are. If TikTok is where certain demographics are, be it ones that you're surprised about or ones that you think are there, like the 27% of teens, or 20% of their 27% of users are teens. Obviously, that's good. And one thing, we want to make sure that we can be on the screens that people prefer, and you need to be able to integrate into new emerging platforms like TikTok, as they've now opened up advertising. But everything we've talked about here today doesn't work without consent. And Josh, you've talked a lot about the different collection points and listening that we do. We at Bridge, we've been around for 10 plus years. We've seen sort of the industry and regulation and government sort of come about in that time, as the industry has grown up. And between GDPR and CCPA and just honestly data being talked about more on the front page of the New York Times, people are getting more educated around what that data thing is, what the blue bar on the top of your iPhone means when it shows up, and we're being forced to be transparent. And I personally think that's good, right? I think it's good that people understand what's being collected, how it's being used, because it's scary if you just hear about it and you didn't know about it. And that transparency, I think, is going to help the industry in the long run, not hurt us, so that people are scared that, oh my God, people are going to know and they're going to opt out. We at Bridge, who only work off of explicit consent, opt-in data, we don't do anything, we don't even collect anything that doesn't explicitly, where the user didn't explicitly opt in. That's good. They said, okay, I'm good with it. I want to have better targeting towards me. And if you don't do it, it's just foundational to everything we've discussed. If you don't have that, you can't do anything we've talked about. So I want to jump to questions here. And thank you everyone for attending and sending in your questions. We've seen really nice engagement here. And, if we don't get to your questions, we will reach out to you and answer what we can if we don't have time today. So I want to start, Eddie, with you. How can the marketers, a lot attending today, work with TrueSet and Bridge to optimize, to get their data higher quality, but they need to know what's wrong with it to get it. So how do you guys do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the simplest thing is to demand that level of transparency from the people that you're buying data from. Bridge has obviously already gone through the scoring process, but there's no reason why you can't ask any of the people that you're in consideration for using data for a campaign to be scored as well. And that's really the first step.
Eddie, do you want to spend another few seconds on this? Or you feel like we hit sort of the main points of sort of, the how you do it? We went back to sort of tell people what they got out of it. You know what? Let's go to other questions. I want to. Oh, Eddie, you want to say something? Please do.
The only thing I'd say here is you're never going to be convinced in a 2-minute conversation as to how we do what we do. Same with Bridge. So if you have interest, reach out and ask us.
Yeah, and if you guys know Bridge and you don't know TruthSet, please reach out to Bridge and we'll make an introduction. Same the other way, right? If you can't figure out how to get in touch with us, we're gonna put up a slide at the end that you take a screenshot of with the contact information. But reach out to your partners and we'll get you in touch. Josh, I want to go to you for this next question. I think this is really important, and really one of sort of the foundational points. Like how does linkage, right? That link between either known keys like email to mobile advertising ID, or name and postal link to an email, things like that. Just the link between known and unknown identifiers of a person. How does it positively or really can negatively impact data quality?
Sure.
In your opinion.
So it can impact it positively because you have this more holistic view of a person. You don't just have a silo of, here's an email address of someone who signed up for a car website, and here's a person's name and address who is a certain age and a certain gender, and here's a mobile device that has some apps. Being able to connect those things together allows you to both combine signals together and sort of build a stronger persona about a person, and also take out some noise. On the other hand, it can definitely be a negative if one of your steps is wrong, because you've made an assumption and you've started down a path because you've linked this name and this email together, and now you think, well, this is great. I have a person who is 75 and loves TikTok, everyone's favorite granny. But if you did that wrong and that email does not belong to that device, now you're, targeting this random person who has no interest in TikTok for, TikTok-based advertising, and
right.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, one question just came in. I had the next one queued up, but this question came in from Jeff. Thank you for sending it in. It's very relevant here. Jeff is asking or stating, first-party cookies will still exist in the post-cookie world that we've named it. And yes, you're right. Right, publishers, small, medium, and large, will still have the opportunity to drop cookies on their own properties, and the companies and platforms that relied on third-party cookies are now talking to those publishers to try and piggyback off of those first-party cookies. It's a very large initiative for every major platform, especially in the onboarding, linkage, identity, graph, resolution companies, because they're losing the third-party cookie. First-party cookies are still around. They're highly accurate to measure intent, and they're trying to piggyback. So yes, those publishers, Jeff, will still be able and ultimately will have a new product to sell if they so choose to license their first-party cookies out to identity resolution companies. And the second part is, if you work with third-party audience data, which most advertisers do, how do you verify that privacy consent? Because it is so important, and advertisers are aware of brand safety. There's one really good way to verify privacy consent, which is the question: how do you verify that the data owner, collector, audience builder says that they, gather consented records only? But how do you verify that? Based on their answer, there's one really good way. If they're saying they collected from XYZ place, that means that you should be able to go into that place and you should be able to go through the consent flow. That's the beauty of the consent flow, that you can go on and see that it is the case and it is true. If they are answering, and by the way, this is a really strong way, in a way that, and I'm going to harp on this for a second because privacy is really important. The amazing part of being able to go through the consent flow that said data owner, audience builder said they're gathering their data through, one, because you can do it, and then you could say, show me the record that I submitted, because they obviously need to gather that consent and store it to prove the consent. So that's one way that they need to send it back. And, before all this privacy stuff popped up, sort of in the last few years, data owners could actually say to people who ask questions, that's my secret sauce. I don't want to share that. And now, if they say that, you just say, then I'm not working with you, because everyone else is saying it. So, like, it's a big red flag. I'm sure Eddie and TruthSet, are cognizant of consent as they, measure different people. As it is, if they don't have it, then TruthSet doesn't really probably want to work with them either, right? So, Eddie, I wanna just finish. If you have an opinion on this, I saw you sort of raising your head a little bit and affirming. But I want to finish up with this. Give Josh and Eddie, if you have one more thing that you'd like to hit on, I'll sum it up for you guys. Data is really important. Cookie world is changing, not dying. And consent is paramount. And side point, we will be okay, right? The industry will be okay. We will survive. Eddie, Josh, last words.
Yeah, well, it all comes back to transparency. And it's funny, when we started this mission, I'd be going out personally to data providers and saying, hey, give me all of your data, right? The most important and valuable thing to you, and give it to me for free. And then I'll tell you how good you are at being accurate. So there were companies that couldn't wait to hang up the phone faster. They were like, I don't want anything to do with that. And then there are companies like Bridge who really, went out on a limb because transparency was important to them and data quality was important to them. So I would say, the easiest way to tell, kind of to Ari's point, is to ask the questions about, show me, prove it. And there's companies like Bridge that are willing to do that. And those are the companies that you should probably work with.
And Josh, just before we go to you, Eddie, I want to thank you for participating. I want to thank you for, inviting us to participate. And ultimately what you said, we appreciate you calling that out, and proof's in the pudding. Data and audiences are measurable. You don't just have to take the sales guy's word for it. So thank you. And, so, proud to be a partner and happy to be a partner. And Josh, final word.
Final word is, as you know, Ari, for years, it's the proverbial thing that keeps me up at night, is making sure that our data quality is as good as it can be. And all the time I've tried to, every time I think, okay, here's a new partner that says they have the best data, the first thing I always do is like, all right, let me look up myself, like you were saying. And I'm saying, like, all right, well, I don't live here anymore. I don't work here anymore. My family members that I can look up don't live here. Here are people who live in my apartment building that I don't know and have never lived here. Like, how do we do this? And having TruthSet being able to sort of better tell us this is right, this is not right, just makes it so much easier for us to be able to be confident that our data is the best that it can be.
Thanks, Josh. I love the sales guy at the end there, the data guy selling. I love it. That's awesome.
Always that best.
So one question came in actually as we were wrapping up, that he's pushing us, the gentleman who's submitting the question is pushing us to answer it. So we're gonna answer it. We're gonna do it. So Eddie, actually, I'm gonna come back to you. So it's not final word. Sorry, everybody, for reverting, but it's a worthwhile question. TruthSet, you're giving your stamp of approval or disapproval on the brand, on the data owner, audience owners that are choosing to participate. Are you guys at a place now, or are you trying to get to a place where you can understand if advertisers are willing to actually spend more on an audience, regardless if it's CPM, percent of ad spend, right? Just like, are advertisers actually willing to invest in audiences where, you've given a stamp of approval from an accuracy perspective or a consent flow perspective, right? You guys don't do that part, but like, basically, if TruthSet or anything says like this is better for tangible or intangible reasons, do you see advertisers willing to spend more on it?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ari. And I think it comes down to the fact that since we were measuring at the record level, we can actually impact, the impressions you're serving or the mail you're sending or the things that you're delivering to people that aren't in your target audience. Because that's basically, you flashed up the slide earlier that 75% is wasted. So I think, there's a lot of advertisers that are willing to spend because at the end of the day, they're spending money to be more efficient, and they can actually equate that back to an ROI. So if I'm spending $50 to be $100 more efficient, it makes economical sense to do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. We're actually really gonna finish up after this point. I was gonna say the same thing. The more capable advertisers that are spending, maybe that equates to larger companies, but not necessarily, because what Eddie's talking about is savings, right? So if you invest 50 to get out 100, then it makes sense for any size company. But ultimately, it is about the economics, right? So to answer the question specifically, like if the economics back out from spending more, or investing more on X audience because they have gotten an objective stamp of approval, if that is worthwhile economically, of course you'd spend more, right? It makes sense to spend more. And another reason why it's made more efficient is you don't have to do the testing and invest in that testing as much because companies like TruthSet and TruthSet are doing it for you. And so you're saving time and ultimately you're saving money. So just to wrap that up, great question. It comes down to the numbers. If it makes sense to spend more, you spend more. Don't just make it. Don't just make a decision on something that you haven't proved out from an economics perspective.
Yeah.
And Eddie, if you wanna add one more thing.
The one last thing is like, there's a lot of companies that are skeptical of third-party data, right? I'm sure Ari, you and Josh, you deal with this every day. And rightfully so, right? Because there's basically been no check on the quality or accuracy or consent of this data. So by having a metric out there that you can associate with the quality of data, we're hoping that all ships rise, and basically that everyone is more confident and comfortable in using third-party data. So companies out there that didn't necessarily feel like they were comfortable in the accuracy of this data can now at least stand behind something.
Again, thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Josh. Really informative. And, for those who joined us today, I definitely think you got some value out of sort of the different approaches and, from the data company and owner perspective, as well as the objective rating company of companies like us to help advertisers sort of sift through the dark, the noise, right? So if you submitted a question and we didn't get to it, we are going to reach out to you to answer it. Thank you for those who participated in asking questions. Thank you to everybody for joining. You see my and Eddie email addresses there at the bottom. I'm sure you'll get an email from our group. Thank you for your attendance, which will have the same info. So thank you guys again. Have a great rest of your week, and reach out to TruthSet and Bridge if you want to learn more. And thanks again for attending. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.